What's popping in the streets, everybody? I believe therefore I'm King Silo. Hope you guys are doing all right today. Krumpers page, Krump community was good. I ain't spoke to you guys in a hot minute, or had the opportunity to kind of go back and forth about, just simply our philosophies, thought process, how we judge, et cetera, and stuff like that regarding the Krump. But I have a pretty interesting topic today. So obviously you can see the title. Do you really know Krump? And obviously, I just got done watching the Spartan versus 1K battle. And not to direct this or anything towards anybody, but this particular video was inspired by Kreese Jones. He put on the Crumpers page yesterday, so that would have been Friday at 1:49 a.m. in the morning. And he said, if Spartan lost, I truly don't know Krump at all. What the fuck, laughing emoji. Now, this is not a shot against him or anything like that, but I definitely do think that I want to dig into this statement right here because it is something that I repeatedly see a lot. But before we do that, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Follow me on all social media platforms. Obviously, my information is right there for you. But again, I'm trying to reach 500 subscribers so we can go ahead and get this, go ahead and get up close to the 1K, no pun intended. But yeah, definitely I'm trying to do that. So please support me in the best way that you possibly can by just simply hitting that subscription button. It would mean the world to me. Thank you. But let's get into this topic. So like I said, just to read it again, from Kreese Jones, it says, if Spartan lost, I truly don't know Krump at all. Laughing emoji. What the fuck? Now, I think this is a pretty interesting statement because this is, and it's not to put him on blast and stuff like that, but again, it did kind of serve as like a point and a crossroads that I did definitely want to address that I see a lot of Krumpers do come to when it comes to honestly judging battles, looking at videos and stuff like that, having their opinion, or just overall their philosophy on how Krump is supposed to be practiced. Now, when it came to that, I have had this conversation a couple of times, and even me and Crush do kind of go back and forth about our philosophies regarding Krump and how it's supposed to be judged, what he likes, what I like. And just to be completely honest, majority of the time we're on completely opposing ends as far as the battle. There are some times where I make it some points apparent to him, and there are a lot of stuff that, he makes apparent to me as far as like where Krump came from, the direction it may or may or not be going. But I do think it's an interesting conversation that I do like to have, and I'm forever grateful for our conversations, Crush, regardless of how much shit I talk. But the thing that I don't necessarily have a problem with as far as the statement that Kreese Jones said, but I do think it's a little problematic. And the reason why I say that is because every single time that someone, if there's usually the person who makes that comment are usually on the opposing side, or they're on the minority. Like they're the smaller side that believes in whatever opinion that it is. Now, obviously from what I'm guessing, from what I'm seeing, I see quite a few people, I haven't looked into it too much, but quite a few people are saying that 1K won. And it just being completely transparent, in my personal opinion, I do think 1K won as well. If you haven't seen the video, it should be out by the time that you see this video, so definitely go peep it if you definitely want to hear my opinion on it. But overall, I did give rounds 1 and 3 to 1K. But moving on. But in regards to that particular battle, he's basically just saying like, yo, if you think Spartan lost, then, I don't know Krump. And obviously I would assume he's been here for a while. The issue that I have with that is because every single time that, that a person makes that statement, it's automatically assumed that their entire time here and what they've learned, who they learned from, was pointless. Like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. I don't necessarily agree or disagree with that statement because there are going to be some times where people are just like, hey, yo, this fool just flat out clearly lost. And you're just simply saying that because, you dick riding, or this your family, your crew and stuff, which we do see a lot and has always happened throughout history. The majority of the time, whoever is the most dominant crew, or which is the most dominant Krumper or fam or organization, whatever the case may be, they always do that. They all have it. Every crew in the Krump scene has biased people today, back then, and they will have it in the future. So let's not pretend that we haven't done it at some point in time. It always happens. But it's not necessarily that your time here is wasted, or anybody who makes that comment. It just simply could just be that sometimes it's a little bit more obvious than the others. I don't want people to, I think that's very bad for people to get in that mind frame and just automatically think, I don't know Krump. Sometimes it's just simply different. And kind of pulling as far as the conversation that I do have with Crush, is that we have to understand is that times obviously have just simply changed. We even saw it with like, with Lil C and Miho and Todd Eyes in the back and Rise, and they said, hey yo, if you miss a session or something like that, you could be behind. Like we could have gone through already like 3 different styles or whatever the case may be. Lord forbid that you're gone for a week or a month and stuff like that. Krump will have left you behind. You'll be miles behind as far as where they're at with the style at this particular time. And I had this conversation with Crush because I personally believe in this day and age, the leaders of this generation, I think, have a much better understanding of dance at its roots than they have as much knowledge, historical knowledge of Krump than their predecessors like Crush and Solo and Tsunami and Goliath and Miho and stuff like that. Because even to this day, if I'm being real, like I know what tagging is, but I've heard Miho explain it like 5 or 6 times, but I haven't necessarily seen where its practical use comes into play as far as for Krump. And it may not have necessarily a practical use as far as for Krump right now, but it does, as Miho has explained to us, that it does have its time in Krump and what it inspired for people, whether that be language, whether that be footwork, whatever the case may be, whether that's just simply rooted in LA's culture. It is what it is. But obviously, their generation would have a much more knowledge as far as like what that means. I don't. Now, as far as when we look at this generation, we see a lot of our leaders and stuff like that. Like doesn't even necessarily have to be the leaders, but I'm definitely gonna call them leaders. Fuck that. Like we have people like Fair Warning, you have people like Lionheart, you have people like Bruiser and stuff like that are constantly expanding, pushing the boundaries as far as like their understanding for dance, not just simply Krump. You see them doing showcases, you see them working with different artists, things of that nature. This is where they are broadening their horizon as far as like, hey, we can't compete with you guys, or we can't compete with Crusher generation in terms of as far as like, what these particular movements meant. We can't. But we can go back and understand the roots as far as like, okay, what is this movement? Where does this come from? Understanding where the chest pop come from before it became from Krump. Understanding where a bounce, rock, and a groove and all that stuff, it came from. Our knowledge of dance is just simply different. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons as to why like our opinions differ so much, because literally less than like 7 or 8 years ago, at some capacity, y'all, like California was still, or certain groups and stuff like that, they were still, I won't say 7 or 8 years ago, I'll at least say 10 for sure. 10 years ago, like people were still hiding information as far as for Krump from us, from other regions. I know the East Coast, I definitely know out here in the South, because anytime that we try to ask about Krump or what this was and stuff like that, they'd hide information, they'd give us these half-ass-ended answers. A lot of us from other regions and stuff like that are from different genres of dance, we're not stupid. We know when somebody's giving us a half-ass answer as far as like, hey, how do you explain like what is the application of as far as like, the bounce that you're doing? That could be something particular that, Todd Eyes or any of these other cats have worked at it in their labs and stuff like that. And I understand, I'm not trying to get your lab, I'm not trying to get your material combos or anything like that. I'm asking about a fundamental of dance in general. It obviously comes from hip hop, so therefore we didn't create the bounce. I'm just simply trying to figure out how is it that you apply the bounce? Like what is the bounce? What's the significance that it has for you as a dancer? And maybe get some information on how that can help me apply it to my craft. So that was pretty much the gist of our conversations. What I'm saying is that like, hey guys, we'll never be able to compete with you guys. And even he said something that was very interesting to me. He's like, the reason why I don't necessarily get into all these technicalities about Krump and how it should be judged and stuff like that, because when I was coming up, it was a given. A bounce, a rock, a roll, body control and stuff like that, like how they used to dance back in 2007, 2008 and stuff like that. We didn't have to tell people to do these things. It was already known. Like you saw the movement and you understand what it was. Like even when you're doing a rumble and stuff like that, that's nothing but body control and an isolation. That's it. I'm rocking the upper half of my body and I'm tightening up my arms, to kind of give like that rigid rock back and forth. That's just 2 small pieces to break down like what a rumble is supposed to look like. But back then they just simply knew that what it was, or even, kind of a rock back and forth and stuff like that. Those are things in which like they are taught in fundamental hip hop classes and other genres of dance, but it's not taught here in Krump. And that's the thing, is that when people see that, or when we watch Krumpers dance and stuff like that, and you can't properly break that down, in my personal opinion, for me, it lets me know that you don't really understand the value of that movement. You just simply know how to do that. That's why I always say, like, just simply because you're the best dancer doesn't mean that you're the most knowledgeable. That's not to say that like there are a bunch of dancers out here who don't necessarily know what they're talking about, but I do think that the opinions differ. Is that you have a particular set of skills, you know, but you don't really know the practical use of it, and therefore you also cannot explain it to other people. So that's why I think like the generations class, and it's not to knock anybody, but let's also just keep it a stack as far as like historically like what Krump was used for. Krump was always raw, was very street, you know, helped keep people off the streets, keep them out of harm's way, saved a lot of lives, put people in positions to where they never thought they'd be dreamed of possibly getting to. It was there to save lives. We're now in the generation to where like, all right, we need to start structuring Krump to where it's respected on not just a social level amongst the dance community, but also on a media level, a commercial level, letting people know that like, hey, Krump is not just, it's not rise anymore. We're not all out here dancing in white beaters and Timbs and stuff like that, pushing each other. There's structure to this. You can utilize this as a tool to express yourself. It's an art form, okay? It's just as elegant as any of the other genre of dance. It's just our frequency is different. We have to culminate that. But as I was saying, like, again, that generation, like they don't know. They weren't in there teaching them like, oh, this is how this particular movement works. It's just no, like I'm seeing this movement, it's fire. I'm gonna do this too. And yes, it probably had a name, you know, and there are obviously a lot of stuff as far as in Krump that was definitely broken down by Todd Eyes and Miho and all the other veterans and stuff like that. Like I've had conversations with Solo as well. He's very intuitive, very intelligent, and he's very good as far as like breaking things down. Same as well. One of the best classes I ever been to, or workshops that I ever got an opportunity. I was working, but I was able just to watch. Was Knucklehead when he was talking about his arms, like how he applies the uses of his arms. And that was a very good class, and it was very, 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 very informative to me because I'm a big dude. Arms are important, but not to just simply go off on a rant, but again, like the generations are just simply different. And like Crush says, he's like, yo, we didn't have to explain it. It was just understood. I don't need to break down like what a rumble is to you or what a rock is or what a bounce is or what musicality sounds like or the layers to it and stuff like that. And, you know, am I dancing to the lyrics or the beat? You know, like, am I finding a groove or whatever the case may be? Am I matching the tone or the energy? Am I dancing fast or because of solo's track, am I dancing slow? You know, he was like, all those things that we never had to say. So when we get in front of this generation and you guys were never exposed to that type of raw creativity of what Krump is, you're only used to doing what you're given. And that's why like there was such a gap between us for such a long time, is because this information wasn't told to us. We could see what was happening, but we didn't understand it. You know, it's like there's a big ass boulder, but I have no idea how to get around this thing. But until somebody says like, oh, well, you can either go this way or this way, you can climb over, it's gonna be difficult, you can try and cut through, like we have no idea what to do. We're just stuck. That's why there was just such a long gap between like, you know, California and the East Coast and like the southern or south side and the Midwest for such a long time. Is just because California was just exposed, had so much potency and raw exposure to what Krump was back then that it's just like, bam, like everything is on 10 from the gate. You know, how you mix and master it, how you make it your own, how you create it, it's like a boom, we got everything here for you. The rest of the regions, it was like, all right, we got to go figure out what this is. We don't understand that. A lot, again, I was blessed enough to be a dancer before, so musicality and creativity were things that I could understand. It was the structure and the foundation which escaped me, and a little bit of the language as well, as far as like how I'm supposed to be communicating. So all in all, I don't think that it's that, respectfully, y'all don't know Krump. I think it's just simply because maybe your opinion and your exposure to knowledge about Krump is simply different. You guys always had it, so to speak, kind of handed to you. The rest of us had to go back and get in the lab and, you know, fill up vials of liquids and stuff, like the whole science project kind of looking kind of thing. Like that's how we had to break down Krump. So when we look at it, and when I look at it as not just a Krumper, but as a dancer, there's certain things that just simply stand out to me that may not stand out to others. So I love to hear people's opinion about this particular topic because I do think it is a trending one. And again, this is not a shot towards Crease or anything, but you definitely are the inspiration for this video, so I do thank you for that. Again, please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to the page. Trying to get that 500. Help your boy out. Holla at you later.